Scary news! Scary on America's debt downgrade. Ooh, boo! It's not even Halloween. Woo! You can take your masks off if you're from Wisconsin. You know that, right? If you're from Wisconsin, because Wisconsin people, we know they're not the same as the rest of us and the other 49. Just picking on you, Wisconsin. I love you. Got lots of clients from Wisconsin. You guys are legends. All right. So here's Veronique de Rougy, and I've been a fan of Veronique for many years. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. This article is all right, let's just go into it. And this is from Reason Magazine. I don't know what happened to Reason Magazine. I just don't know, but whatever. America's credit is falling, and the government is still digging deeper into debt. All right. The U.S. cannot borrow its way to prosperity, says Veronique de Rougy. So let's see what she talks about. America's debt-addicted government just lost its AAA credit rating from Moody's, as it previously had from rating agency S&P and Fitch. Many in Washington shrugged it off as a minor or unfair treatment of the Trumpster. The truth is more sobering, a flashing red signal that the United States is no longer seen as a perfect credit risk that politicians should stop pretending economic growth alone can bail us out. However, the Republican passed bill, the big beautiful bill, puts another $3 trillion to $5 trillion in debt assumes without serious consequence. That's the kind of magical thinking that spurred the credit downgrade in the first place. Starting with Hamilton, Americans politicians long understood the importance of fiscal policy guided by the ethos of balanced budgets, low taxes, and steady debt reduction. Well, we didn't have income taxes under Hamilton, Veronique. And secondly, Hamilton was a big tariff proponent, so that's kind of weird, but okay, let's keep going. Washington politicians have abandoned that honorable legacy in recent decades. U.S. national debt by the public is racing towards $30 trillion. All right, so red flag, red flag, red flag. U.S. national debt held by the public. Who is the public? We'll get that here in just a second. The cost of servicing is ballooning. Interest payments are now one of the fastest growing parts of the budget, $1 trillion in 2026. Crowding out other priorities and leaving us vulnerable to economic shocks. All right, so let's talk about that. Who owns the debt? Well, the public does. Who's the public? You, me, mutual funds, pension funds, insurance companies, all kinds of CalPERS, all these places, they own the debt. So who receives the interest off the debt? You, me, pension funds, insurance companies, CalPERS. We receive the interest payments off that debt. Okay. So we're literally on the receiving end of the interest. The government's taking the debt. We are receiving it because we loan the money to them. It's no different if I loan Finney some money here. I say, here's $100. Finney says, I'll pay you, Josh, 5% a year. I get $5 a year on that $100 debt. All right. Then at some point it matures. In this case, we're never going to pay off the debt. It'll never happen. The debt will never mature. Whereas it's going to be perpetual interest payments for the rest of our lives. But we still receive the interest off that. Do we not? Yes, we do. All right, then this part right here is crowding out priorities and leaving us vulnerable to economic shocks. Crowding out priorities, because they always say this. They say government borrowing crowds out private sector debt, lending. I'm like, really? Where's the evidence of that? Because we always hear this. Public debt crowds out other innovation, essentially. Where is it crowding out of innovation? Could it be something to be said that they'll always say, well, it would be we have more innovation if there wasn't private public debt? Okay, you can make that argument. It's not based on it's just pure speculative for sure. Or you can say, how do we have, I'm just curious, let's go back to Twitter and Facebook, all these big companies, Google AI and all this stuff. Were they done at the behest of the government? You think the government didn't, I don't encourage this at all. But let's not presume for one fact that all these companies, SpaceX, electric vehicles, solar panels, let's not for 1 second at all assume that these things weren't financed with some, if not most, government debt. It's just a fact, too. Come on. Nuclear energy, never mind your baseball stadiums. And we can argue all day long against this, for sure. I get it. But the idea that government debt is crowding out private innovation because private sector would secure the debt to finance nuclear energy, to secure your stupid baseball stadium and all that, it's just so freaking dumb. We know Twitter is financed by the CIA. Absolutely. We know these other firms, Google, SpaceX, electric vehicles, most of these things are financed by government in some capacity. So are they actually crowding out private investment? The answer is unequivocally no. In fact, if anything, the government lending to these corporations is allowing more private investment to go in there because they say, well, if government's doing it, I'm going to lend it too. Look, I don't like it. I don't. That's literally. I don't want the government to get involved in private activity. Again, socialize the risk, privatize the profits. I hate it, but it is what it is. The idea crowds out private investment is just stupid. It's just not true, man. I mean, the evidence of that is over the top. I find it funny too. Here's Veronique Desrougy. The CBO warns that even modest interest rate increases could lead to hundreds of billions of dollars in added annual costs. Now all of a sudden, the Reason magazine and libertarians have found the CBO to be trustworthy. This shocks me. This whole thing just shocks me. The Reason magazine and libertarians. Never before in the history of mankind have any libertarians trusted the CBO. Now all of a sudden they do. And by the way, again, going back to the modest interest rate increases could lead to hundreds of billions of added annual costs. And who gets those added annual costs? You and I, because we loan the money to the government. All right, so right here, historically, downgrades like this from the S&P in 2011 or Fitch in 2023 haven't caused immediate crisis. But they do raise borrowing costs and gradually erode investor confidence. All right, so what has happened in the S&P 500 since 2011? Let's take a look. Political calculations, S&P 500 at your fingertips is right here. And we're going to go to August 2011 because that's when the S&P downgraded the U.S. debt as 2011. We'll go to August 2011. August 2011. Hang tight, amigos. Hang tight right there. And we're going to go to now. So what has the S&P 500 done since August 2011 when the debt was downgraded? The S&P 500 has averaged index with full dividend reinvestments 13.74% a year. All right, so but let's see. The downgrade, they gradually erode investor confidence. So that obviously did not happen. That's just silly. On top of that, they do raise borrowing costs. So what happened with borrowing costs from August 2011? Look at July 2011 to August 2011, September 2011. Let's see what happened in borrowing costs the month before the downgrade, the month of the downgrade, and the month after the downgrade. Shall we? Yes, we shall. All right, so here's the 10-year Treasury. Yield on the 10-year Treasury. July 2011 was 3%. Yield on the 10-year Treasury, the month of the downgraded was 2.3. Yield on the 10-year Treasury, the month after the downgrade was 1.98. So that's what's a 33% decline. And it went all the way down to 1.62, 1.53. Yeah, so what Veronique is saying here is that what did she say here? Hold on a second, I go back here. Boink. Saying the raised borrowing costs, it just did not happen. It just, come on, Ronnie. It's what freaking ticks me off. It's like what you say is just wrong. It's like tariffs cause inflation. It's just wrong. And I don't understand this, man. It's crazy to me that she said, and Veronique was what, Mercatus Institute or something like that, the George Mason, which I'm a fan of, but it's insanity. So I just want to know what the serious consequences are of an extra $3 to $5 trillion in debt. I just want to know because right now we're at $35 trillion. So another 3 is what, 10% increase in debt. How long is that going to take? 5, 10 years? Something? I don't know. You don't know. No one knows. And yet I'm sitting there thinking, have you not looked at history about the public debt? You think this is the only time this has happened? It happens all the time. It's the weirdest thing. And they always use debt to GDP. That's what they always use. The debt to GDP. I'm sitting there thinking, let's take a look at debt to GDPs. All right, let's see what we got. So here's the debt to GDP right here. 124 for the United States. That means for our GDP, we'll just say it's 30, I don't know what it is. $30 trillion. I'm just using that for an example. So our debt is 24% above our GDP. So if I don't know if these numbers are going to reach 124, but if we have $30 trillion of debt and our GDP is 30 trillion, that means our debt to GDP is 100%. If we have 24% above 30 trillion is our GDP, that's 124% debt to GDP. Right? Is that really that big of a deal? The 100% threshold really magically, it's just so stupid. So here's China, 88% debt to GDP. Oh, that's sustainable, but ours is not. Here's the Euro area. Here's Germany, 62% debt to GDP. Look at Japan, 236% debt to GDP. So let's just show you. Let's see the countries with the highest debt to GDP. Japan, Italy, US, France, Canada. Canada, what? United Kingdom, China. All these are big countries. Euro area, India. Let's go the other way. Russia, Mexico, Germany is the lowest, Brazil, India, Euro. So, come on, man. you're going to say at the end of the day, Russia is in a better place than us. Mexico is in a better place than us. Germany's a basket case because they drove out all their freaking cheap electricity that they need for their manufacturing. So give me a break. Even Canada's at one. I mean, what's this? France is at one. 124. Japan. The whole thing's just stupid. So debt to GDP, that's what all the economists say. Debt to GDP is horrible. Oh my goodness. And yet Japan's been above 100% debt to GDP. Hell, Japan's been at 200% debt to GDP for years and years and years and years and years. And yet Japan still is there. It's still growing. I mean, it's not growing much. No economies are growing that much. Let's see our growth rate here. GDP growth. Russia's in the negative, Mexico 0.2%, Germany 0.4%, Brazil, these again, the lowest debt to GDPs, 0.2, India 1.6, Euro 0.3, China 1.2, where's us? We're crushing, negative 0.3, Italy 0.3, I think these are quarters. Yeah, these are just quarters. So not really a big, that really, frankly, big of a deal, just a quarter, but you can see. The lower the debt to GDP does not indicate at all higher growth. It just does not. And how we know that? If we look at our debt to GDP in the 1970s, the economy stagflation, you just can't. These things just don't correlate to say anything. Anyway, whole point again, as always, the libertarians, the economists that are out there, they think they're all down in a bag of chips. And they're, oh yeah, by the way, low debt to GDP. We didn't even talk about inflation. Look at that, Russia inflation 10.2%. And these are just the big countries. Never mind the smaller countries like Somalia, Saudi Arabia, and whatnot. I mean, just look at the inflation rate. I mean, here's China inflation rate, negative 0.10 basis points. But again, debt to GDP doesn't mean, all these things are, all government budgets are in negative. They all are taking on more debt. How can that possibly be the case? Look at that. They all take on more debt. How? How can that possibly be the case? How can every country be in debt? And there got to be a country that's not in debt? No. God bless. Love your thoughts. I'm not worried in the least about this. The whole thing's just so silly. The fact that Veronique has fallen for it with numbers that simply aren't just not true. It's embarrassing. All right, God bless. We'll see you.